And now we are going to pass to our next speaker, is Bogdan from Tenderly. This is especially interesting for all the projects and partners working on RSK. This is a wonderful solution that will help you, control and do better use of your platforms. So with no further ado, Bogdan, go ahead. The stage is yours.
Hi, thanks, Gabriel. Just can you get the thumbs up if you can hear me well? Is it good? Okay, sure.
Yes, so, it's good. Just try to get closer to the mic, but it's good.
Okay, awesome. So, hi everyone. My name is Bogdan. I'm one of the co-founders and the CTO of Tenderly, which is a monitoring and debugging platform for blockchains that basically have smart contracts. And we were very happy once we saw it, because from the very beginning, somehow we wanted to interact with Bitcoin. And when we found out about RSK and everything that can be done there on the smart contract layer, we were quite happy to jump on board and help out developers building on top of RSK, especially when it comes to DeFi and everything else. So I'm going to share my screen now because I like to show stuff. I'm really bad at presenting PowerPoint presentations. I'm much better at clicking on things. So just give me a second to share here. So here we go. You should be seeing my screen now. So I'm guessing everyone here that has been using RSK has used the Block Explorer at some point in their life. Okay, good, it's sharing. So in one or the other point of their lives, you can think of Tenderly as something similar, but much more powerful. And this will especially be interesting to the partners on the live stream right now who are developing those smart contracts. So here I have added to a project, which is project like in any other software as a service product. Basically, I have added some contracts on the RSK network, and one of them is even on the RSK testnet. Now, usually when you use the Block Explorer, you would probably go and look at each particular contract on the RSK Block Explorer on the Block Scout instance that is also pointing on RSK, and you would see the transactions there. The first powerful thing that we can see here is that we have all of our transactions that we care about our smart contracts as developers building them in one central place. An even more interesting thing is that we can do complex filters, like, let's say I want to get all of the failed internal transactions that happened in my project, and we can see them almost instantly pop up. Now, Tenderly came to us as an idea 2.5 years ago, and it was one of those scratch your own itch situations. So we were developing smart contracts at that point on top of Ethereum, and we had problems where we didn't know why our transaction failed. So one of my colleagues, Nebush, got this crazy idea: let's implement stack traces to actually see where everything is failing. And this was actually one of the first things that we developed on Tenderly. So the thing that you will see now, if you usually look at the Block Explorer, and this is maybe not a good, this is an internal transaction, sorry. Of course, I'm going to pick a wrong one for the demo. But let's pick a failed transaction here. And let's pick, I don't know, this one. I hope we're going to see a normal stack trace here. But basically, we can see exactly where a transaction failed. Now, everyone developing smart contracts know that it's really hard to see why a particular transaction failed. By using Tenderly, you can save even a couple of hours per day on your development workflow. No developer likes to see why their code is failing. They like writing new code. And of course, this isn't rendering or opening wrong transactions. I'm going to open a successful one, and you'll see how the overviews actually look. So if we pick one of the transactions here, we can actually see a normal stack trace that we would expect from a programming language, basically in 2021. But what's even more powerful here, you will note that there isn't like a proper debugger while developing smart contracts. I can jump into here, and we can actually see, and I can use the debugger like what you would expect in a programming language. So here I can see, for example, the output variable of the admin function is this 0x12ed, whatever, and I can go and step through the transaction and see exactly what's happening. But what is even more powerful here, of course, we can see events that were emitted. These aren't decoded as we don't have the source code for these particular contracts here. We can see the state changes here. But an interesting thing to note here is the gas profiler. So this is even more interesting, for example, on Ethereum, where the gas prices are crazy, but also in RSK, you have the block limit, how many transactions can go into a particular block. This is a really useful useful view where you can actually go into each particular thing that happened in the transaction and see what used how much gas. And in that way, you can optimize your transactions. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's all great. I have my contracts added here. How can I do this locally? So there's actually a couple of ways you can do it. I'm going to pick some successful transaction that was direct. Let's go here. These are all from a proxy. Let's pick something that isn't a proxy. So as you can see now, I can actually use the filters to drill down into a transaction that I want to do. The token here didn't have that. Let's pick this transfer in. This is great. So if I use this transaction here, once it loads up, I can actually start changing the parameters of the transaction and see what would have happened if something was different. This is something we call simulation. So the simulator basically gives you a way to change the parameters of a particular transaction and see if it will pass or fail. So I'm going to pick, let's say, for example, this address, and let's say we're going to transfer a value of 200. Now, we can see that this happened in block 3286681. It doesn't matter. I can even see what would happen if I submitted the transaction now. Or let's say, for example, if I did it 4 blocks away at the transaction index of 6, for example, and I passed in more gas. So I'm changing all of this. And now when I click on simulate transaction, it won't submit the transaction on chain. So it won't spend any real money to see what will happen. It will actually simulate the transaction and give me the same view that you saw before, only for a transaction that actually never occurred on chain. And here we can see it says token transfer is not allowed during sale. Okay, I can go to debug error, for example, and here in the debugger we can exactly see why it failed. So we see that if any of these are matched, the require will fail, and I can see the state variables that are actually participating in this. Again, I can go through everything, see exactly what happened line by line. There were no state changes as the transaction failed. Again, we can deep dive into the gas profiler, see what used how much gas. Again, deep dive, this is a simple transaction. And that's basically the transaction screen in the simulator. Now, an even more crazy thing that we can do is the forks feature. So now I can say, create a fork. I can pick the RSK here. And I can even say, okay, so let's go 5 blocks back, and I'm going to create a fork. So this is my test fork. And you can basically think of this as your own private fork you can play around with. So instead of even having to use the RSK testnet, you can create a fork for yourself that's working with mainnet data and test everything out for your DeFi project, for example. And then again, you can do create simulation. I can pick, I don't know, let's do this multi-sig wallet here. We can do the ad owner, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can actually chain multiple simulations on top of each other and simulate complex on-chain transactions. So that's the forks feature. Now, the next one that we have here is local transactions, and I won't do a deep dive here as it will be really boring for you to look at me using the terminal. But basically, it gives you all of the functionalities you saw so far, only for your local development. So while you have a local RSK node up and running, you can tell Tenderly how to connect to it, and you get all of this tooling for your local transaction. Now, every project needs to know how good is it performing. Are people using it? How many transactions are failing? Are the events that I'm expecting actually getting emitted and stuff like that? And that's where our analytics feature comes in. So here I have a couple of widgets that are tracking some stuff. This is the default dashboard that every project gets. So you have, for example, transactions over time, the number of events emitted over time, top callers of my smart contracts, for example. And then the most important one when you're building any product basically is the daily active users, weekly active users, and the monthly active users. But this is not what you get of only this. So I can go, for example, here, say create graph, and just to show you, so we don't cache anything. So everything you do is calculated on demand just for you. So you always know that you're working with the most up-to-date data. So let's do something crazy. Let's do the average gas used for each contract per function. Okay, we're getting some data here. And then let's do it by the hour. And this is a crazy graph that makes no sense to you actually track, but here we can actually see, let's remove contracts so we get a bit less number of lines, but here we can see, for example, the next state function at 6 p.m. on April 26th was on average using 70,445 gas. And we can use this. I can add this, for example, to my dashboard that we just saw. And if I scroll down here now, we'll actually see it here. And then if this was something that I was really convinced on I need to track, I can just come here and at a glance be sure that everything is performing as it should. An interesting thing to note here is that, for example, you could have outlier detection here. So if some particular function starts using more gas than before, you could see it here, and then you would know that you would have to jump in and change something. And then finally, the alerting feature, which I like the most about our product. So we all know when you're building stuff on chain, on whichever chain, basically, you want to be sure that everything is working as expected. So before Tenderly and other products that had alerting, although Tenderly definitely has the most flexible alerting system, you would have to go, and then, I don't know, if you're building on Ethereum, you would have to go each morning, wake up, refresh Etherscan. If you're working on RSK, you would either have to go to the Block Scout or the RSK Block Explorer and basically refresh your contract and see what happened during the night. That's not ideal. That's not what developers should do. Developers should develop. They shouldn't refresh pages. So here you can actually go and set up different alerts for different cases. So the first thing that you see here is the traditional ones that you would expect. So alert me if there's a successful or a failed transaction. I'm going to come back to these, but for example, the emitted event. So if a particular event is emitted, notify me. If there was an ERC20 token transfer, if a particular address called my smart contract. Again, if the balance, and we have to change here not to say ETH, it should be generally value balance, as we're now supporting a lot of chains, not just Ethereum and RSK. But basically, if the balance of these smart contracts falls below a certain threshold, notify me. If the transaction value matches a certain criteria, or if the state changed. And now let's focus on the state change, for example. I want to show you how flexible this is. So let's say, for example, I want to see if the state of the token that we were looking at here changes in a particular way. So let's see if the total supply changed by a particular percentage, so by more than 30%. Or let's say, for example, if, I don't know, let's pick a criteria and see if it's greater than 10,000, notify me. Or if just the value changed, notify me then. So it's quite flexible what you can do. The same thing would be if we pick the event parameter, for example. Let's do the token one. And then we know that all ERC20 tokens basically emit a transfer event. So we can do something, let's call it vanilla, and do if my address is called for the transfer, notify me. But let's say, for example, we can say notify me of all whale transactions. So let's say, for example, if the value of the transfer event is greater than or equal this many CSOV tokens, I'm not sure how much this is actually, notify me then. And then we can notify on a lot of places. So all of this will happen in real time. And you can basically get alerts for email, Slack, Telegram, Discord, Sentry, and PagerDuty. And then finally, all of this is available via an API, and you can add people as collaborators. And that's about it for the short demo I wanted to do. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bogdan. I already can feel all the RSK developers working on projects on RSK, thinking and brainstorming how to use this amazing tool. So thank you so much. I'm really looking forward. If anyone wants to contact you or the Tenderly team, where can they find you? Any website or any info?
Sure. I saw in the comments somebody linked their website, so it's basically tenderly.co. The easiest way is to go there. In the bottom right, there's a chat. It will probably be me popping up saying, "How can I help?" And then you can just chat there, and we usually answer pretty quickly. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and congratulations for this amazing technology. And